Hello, everybody. Welcome. I will call this meeting of the City of Boise's Public Works Commission to order. And I will start with a quick roll call. If you are here, please let me know. Commissioner Ellis, Commissioner Collette,
Here.
Commissioner Pagan,
Here.
Commissioner Wernz,
Here.
Commissioner Lockett,
Here.
Commissioner Morgan,
I'm here.
Commissioner Thornfelt. All right, thank you, everybody. That brings us to the next item on our agenda, and that is the approval of the minutes from our last regular meeting on May 1st. And I would entertain a motion.
Chair, I so move to approve these minutes.
We have a motion, a second?
I second.
All right. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. All right, that brings us to our regular agenda, and our first item is additional topic consideration. And I will toss that over to staff.
Chair Brabett?
Yes, Commissioner.
Yes, sorry to interrupt. I'm not seeing anything on my screen, whether it's video or any kind of shared screen. I'm not sure if the other Zoom participants are having the same issue.
Let me check with folks and see. Are we currently sharing, or is that en route? All right, sounds like it's en route.
Okay, perfect. So it's not a me problem.
All right, is there a tech requirement for the first item on the agenda?
No, Chair, there's not.
All right, well, I'll hand it over to you then.
Great, thank you. And it's my pleasure to introduce Melissa Stoner. Melissa is our Community Engagement Lead for Public Works, and she's going to be taking on the role of coordinating and leading the Public Works Commission workshops. I'll let Melissa introduce herself, and then we'll jump into the actual agenda item. So, Melissa.
Thank you. Good to be with you all here this afternoon. My name is Melissa Stoner, and I've recently joined the city and the Public Works team. Previously, a little bit about myself, I was employed in local news media and marketing and creative services. I dipped my toes into Public Works as a volunteer with the Curb It Pro program, which some of you might remember. I was actually served with Commissioner Ellis in the Curb It Pro program. And that's when I became curious about Public Works, and then a couple years later, I actually joined the team, and it's been my pleasure to learn a great deal more, not only about the solid waste services, but the entire world of water as well. So glad to be with you tonight. Our topic focus this evening, as you know, is going to be the third in this series of the recycled water program. And then in the regularly scheduled fall quarterly meeting next month, we're going to be turning to the solid waste strategic plan. You should have received an invitation to take the survey, and I hope you were able to. That survey closed on Monday, and we're really excited to share the results with you soon. And we're going to preview that a little bit for you tonight as well. But first, we wanted to take a moment for discussion on the content focus for 2025. So I'm going to turn it over to Director Burgos.
Thank you, Melissa. As you know, several years ago, we had a discussion about maybe changing the format of the commission, in part because you were asking us how you could be of best use to the department and to the city. And so out of that conversation came the idea that, well, actually what would be really helpful for us is if we could do deep dives on specific topics that are really pressing for Public Works and the city. And so out of that discussion in the first year, in FY24, we landed on the recycled water program, and we've been focusing on the recycled water program exclusively as part of the discussion with the commission. And so in 25, similarly, we'd like to focus in on a couple of topics. We have thoughts as staff, but certainly it's the pleasure of the commission on what you'd want us to focus in on. Three things that pop kind of to the top of our prioritization list is the solid waste strategic plan. We'd love to continue that dialogue with you. That dialogue would be a combination of feedback on perception of the current programs, as well as we get the survey results in and we start to frame up the solid waste strategic plan. What are some of the options we should consider moving forward, bouncing those off of you, hearing your perspectives, and then hearing what you're hearing from the community as you take that back to your neighbors and your friends and family. So that's one topic. The recycled water program is going to continue, and I think moving forward, we won't have those quarterly updates, but we will, based on what we share tonight, we'll share towards the spring timeframe, I think, and probably May timeframe, some results of the National Water Research Institute, NWRI panel that'll happen in the spring, as well as some of the results of what's coming out of what we're going to discuss tonight. So I think we'll want to give you that update in the spring. Another topic is going to be the implementation of the Public Works Arts Master Plan. As part of the work with our Arts Department, we have developed a Public Works Arts Master Plan, and the focus of that plan is really on engaging the community, specifically on climate-related topics. And those can have wide-ranging specific areas, right? So water renewal, recycled water, actual climate work like greenhouse gas emissions reduction, resiliency, the solid waste program that Melissa alluded to. So the Arts Master Plan is, historically, we've had almost all of our public art that we've invested in our Percent for Art program has been invested at the watershed. That's been a wildly successful program, and I think it still remains the largest concentration of public art in the state of Idaho. However, we would like to start kind of taking that out to the community with art projects, art installations, art concepts to start highlighting the challenges around climate change and how we can get the community engaged in climate action. And so that's really the intent of the Public Works Arts Master Plan, shifting that kind of coming out to the community as opposed to having it all concentrated at the watershed. So that would be a topic that if you're interested in learning more and giving us feedback on, that would be another topic area. I think we're going to start, we are going to start a more proactive climate community plan to get the community more engaged in climate action. That could be another area. We don't have to make a decision tonight. I think going to the November meeting, we'd like to hear your thoughts and then maybe land on a topic or two. But curious to hear if there's anything else from your perspective that you're hearing about that would kind of be a topic you'd want to have discussed in November to frame up where we would land as a commission.
I'll open it up. Any ideas from the commission? Right, hearing, oh, yes,
Chair.
Commissioner.
I don't have any additions, but just think that that's a very well-rounded list and appreciate the thoughtfulness and excited about all of those topics.
And Chair, we can do multiple topics. It really is up to the commission on what you want us to cover. So if all of those topics sound interesting, or three of them, we can try to figure out how to do that given the time constraints, but we can figure out how to do that.
Awesome. Yeah, I think they all sound good, and I would almost, I would ask for your input on what would be the most useful exercise of the commission in doing this work. So whatever topics make the most sense to leverage the grand body of expertise that we have rallied here.
Yeah, and Chair, I would definitely, top of mind is the solid waste strategic plan. That's going to be one that we're going to be really diving into deeply in 25, and we'll want to test some concepts with you all. Things like pay-as-you-throw concepts, and how does that resonate with you? What are some of the overarching goals we're trying to accomplish? Should there be other goals that we should focus in on? So there'll be a lot of discussion there.
Awesome. Any other thoughts? All right, hearing none. Thank you. All right, and that brings us to the next item on our agenda, the Curbit program introduction. And is there a tech need for this as well?
So
We're back up.
oh, we're back up. Okay. I thought
Okay.
you said we're back up. I was like,
Awesome. Well, I'll hand it over to you then.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just want to welcome Peter McAuliffe. He's our solid waste programs manager. And Peter and the team have been doing amazing work on the programs to date, and then trying to frame up for the community the questions of what we want next out of our solid waste programs. And so Peter's going to give a brief overview of what's coming with the solid waste strategic plan, the types of things we're talking about. The survey wraps up today. Is it
It's
last?
done.
Is it done? Okay.
Yeah.
I took it, I think yesterday, so I think I snuck in there.
Nothing like the last minute, huh?
I got it done. So I'll turn it over to Peter. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Good to be here, Commission and Chair. You know, as Melissa and Steve alluded to, we're just going to really give you a super brief preview of what we're going to talk about in November. So you'll probably have a lot of questions, but we'll dive deeper into it in November. So the solid waste strategic plan, that current project, we started that in July of this year. And really the purpose of it in a nutshell, and I just made this up like 5 minutes ago, so excuse me if you don't agree with it, Steve, but we want to really understand community priorities when it comes to solid waste programming, and we want to develop some concrete action items that we can do in the next 10 years, right? Sometimes there's just so much stuff going on in the solid waste world and in the water world and everywhere else that, you know, we start chasing things that look interesting, but we want to have some concrete plans and look at those and have a 10-year plan going forward. So that's the basics of it. And, you know, our key stakeholders that are working on the plan are city staff, materials management staff, and community engagement staff. We also have a consultant, HDR, that we've hired to help us with this, that they've done a lot of plans for other cities, so they're helping us along the way. And then, of course, Public Works Commission and Council. And, you know, we'll be, as we said, we'll be looking to Public Works Commission to help us out in November. And then as we get a little farther down the line, we'll be looping in council once we get a little bit more of a concrete project started and a plan. So it's about a 14-month plan that we're looking at, or a project that we're looking at. So we're hoping to have it completed by August, September of 2025. The community survey that Melissa mentioned, we're excited about that. It's one of the first things that we did. You know, we're aware that the community is our customers. They're our customers, so we want to hear from them first and understand what they want, what they don't want. So we sent out that survey. It was developed by staff with assistance from our consultant and also some input from BSU, the survey research director there at BSU, Matthew May. So we're grateful to him for his help. Really what we're looking at the community surveys, we want to figure out customer knowledge and opinions on topics such as our current programming, communication preferences, potential future initiatives and programs, and also things like rate structures and policies that we could develop. So we tried to get that all into 23 or so questions, and we're excited. We got 4,000 responses from the community. So it's really, really great to see that kind of response from the community. We know they're interested. And, you know, so we'll look at those responses and look at that data. We're going to send it to Public Works Commission before the next meeting, give you guys a week or two, hopefully, to be able to look at those questions and see the responses. And then at the November meeting, we'll explain in more detail the scope of the project, what we're trying to do, and give some more background information. We'll listen to your feedback on the survey, your ideas for the plan at that time, and we'll go from there. So we're excited about it, and we hope that the commission is also excited and has some good ideas for us. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions or?
Just a quick comment. I mean, this community never ceases to amaze. 4,000 responses to a survey is like crazy.
Yeah,
That's
my question. What's your secret?
Yeah. That's,
As much as I hate to admit it, it's the text ability of Republic Services, where we sent out a text to 45,000 customers. So that helps when you can get that kind of exposure to your customer base.
Any other questions from the commission? Commissioner Lockett?
Mr. Chair, my question was the same thing. How, because I saw all of you cheer, so I was wondering what a typical number of responses would be to a typical city survey.
Chair, Commissioner, good question. I mean, it really depends on the topic. It can be as few as a couple hundred. But 4,000 is like, that's kind of unheard of, I think. So it also reinforces, for whatever reason, this community solid waste programs this community is so passionate about that particular topic. Part of it, I think, is really tangible, right? You participate actively in it. You're making decisions on where you put things. So, yeah, it's a really, really high number, and we don't typically see that kind of a response.
Great. And then just to follow up, please,
Go ahead.
will you please give us, even if it's short, like maybe less than 15 minutes, 10 minutes, kind of like a solid waste 101, like tell me all the things that are solid waste and what, people clearly care about some of it, but like what else is solid? Like, I'll just need a bit of a 101, please, as a part of your presentation into the strategic plan.
Chair, Commissioner, yeah, we definitely will do that. And I'm actually glad you said that because we're talking with our consultant, and that's part of what we're doing right now is developing, like, here's where we are now, right? Like, because you can't just look to the future and not understand what we have now and how it works. And they were worried that was getting too long and that we shouldn't put it in the report and stuff like that. I was like, I think it's really important because I think people can't envision the future if they don't know where we are right now. So we will definitely do that. And thank you.
Councilmember Corliss, and
Yeah.
thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here today. Commissioner, I have one question, if I may.
Sure.
So can you kind of give us give me a high level of the role that our consultant HDR is playing as part of the project?
Yeah, sure. Chair and council member, thank you. HDR, as I said, they have we went through a RFP process, obviously looked at a couple different consultants. Part of that was they showed us some of the plans that they did for other communities, and we looked at them and really liked one of their plans that they had for Tucson, Arizona. And I think their role is, they want us and the community to really be the ones that make the decisions about the important topics of the plan. And I think their role is kind of a convener, and also as to be subject matter experts for how is this possible? Like, people will come up with, we can come up with great ideas and they can say, hey, like, that's a great idea. Now we've heard that this community and this community have tried that and it hasn't worked, or it has worked. So kind of a sounding board there too for ideas that come up, and to really pull all the different pieces together and put it into a cohesive piece that council, Public Works Commission, and the community can easily read and understand. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions from the commission?
Just one comment, Chair. The survey, the idea that we start with community engagement is something that's really important to us at the city, as opposed to going out with a whole bunch of solutions, doing all this work, and then coming and saying, kind of pick one. We've started with the utility plan back in 2017, 16 timeframe, and really trying to get the community, one, to understand their level of understanding of the programs and get a sense for what we need to focus in on, where are their priority areas before we start just assuming that we know. And that process has worked really well for us in multiple areas. And so that's one of the reasons why we start with the survey, just to frame that first before we start coming up with all of our scientists and engineers and all the different ideas. Let's figure out first what the community thinks and then go from there.
Cool.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. All right, and that brings us to Next item on our agenda, the recycled water program discussion, and I will turn it over to staff.
A slide. All right, we're getting set up here. Chair, commissioners, council member, really excited to be here in, I think like Melissa said, our third installment of the recycled water program updates. It's been just a little while, so we did send some interim homework, and we're excited to hear from you all today as much as you're hearing from us. So today we will follow up from our session in May. In particular, we'll have a conversation and hear from you all on the messaging around groundwater recharge, what resonated with you. Really excited about that. There's a nice whiteboard backdrop here to guide that. Share a little bit of an update on just the program progress report, similar to those updates that we've been sharing in the past meetings, some information on community engagement and education that you all have been asking for and we'll follow up on. And then really spending a fair amount of our time today on the groundwater recharge studies, where we are with that, and then what will be coming next and what would come back with you. So we'll start high level and we'll get really detailed as we move forward. Before we get started, we do have a few folks, so I want to just introduce myself and then I'll have Brandon and Dan introduce themselves as well. My name is Haley Faulkner. I'm the Water Renewal Services Utility Programs Manager in Public Works. That is a lot of words. I have within Water Renewal the non-operations kind of side of that utility. So our planning work, regulatory work, and then the programs that get implemented to build our projects. I've been at the city 9 years. Some of what I like to do when I'm not here, I've got 3 kids, so a lot of following them around, and we're finding new activities. But I play volleyball. I have a fun, well, both my teams are great fun, but one team is much more competitive. So the only regret is that game is tonight at 9 o'clock, and I don't really like to leave my house at 8:30 to go play volleyball at 9 o'clock. I'll have Brandon introduce himself, and then I'm hoping we can get Dan also for a quick intro right now, and then I'll get started.
Hi, I'm Brandon Peachin, the Operations Coordinator for Recycled Water. I've been with the city for 13 years, almost all of that in operations at our water renewal facilities. Some personal information about myself. Through my son playing lacrosse, I've started live streaming lacrosse games, high school, and now I am running an Instagram page that also follows and supports local lacrosse. And I have a new addiction to Canva. It's more of a love-hate relationship, but I'm getting pretty good at it. So that's enough about me for now. So Dan, please.
Dan, I know you're online, but can we hear from you as well?
Yeah, of course. Hey, good evening, everybody. Well, evening my time. I sit in Michigan. Most of my career, all of my career, I should say, professional career has been in Idaho, dealing with water resources of one way or another. I got my graduate degree from BSU, and I currently work at Brown and Caldwell. I have spent time at the state of Idaho too, dealing with water administration. So I know Idaho water resources better than I do the state where I live currently. I've got I got 2 little girls, a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old. So you might see them pop in and out. It's kind of, it's that time around here. And then one thing I always think about sharing personal stuff. One thing that I really, really love is mountain biking. And I have to thank Boise, Idaho for showing me the ropes in that regard. So I'm happy to be here. I gave the presentation on the geochem last time around, and here to support Brandon and Haley, Steve and others with the with groundwater recharge question. So happy to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. There. Now we are more than the talking heads about the technical topic. We are humans. I'll just provide a little bit of the background, kind of connecting thread between where we were before and where we are here today. And really, you'll hear much of today's conversation facilitated by Melissa and also from Brandon. I guess maybe a quick staff update. You've seen Royce a few times with us. He's moved on to a different role. We're really excited for him and for that organization. But in that, we're like with him not being here as we prepare to backfill that position, you will get to meet and hear from more of our team. And we're excited to kind of grow that role as well as we move forward. So really at its foundation, when we talk about this recycled water program, what we want you all to know and remember, and what really founds this work, is that the recycled water program allows us to keep our water local.
We know that we are facing a multitude of challenges at once. We have growth, we have climate change and resiliency, kind of opportunities where we can produce a water supply and keep that here. As we grow, we do need to also increase the capacity of our facilities. So this is a solution that allows us to do both of those things. We can add capacity to our system, meet regulations, but also produce a high quality water that can be reused. Too many buttons. When we talk about the drivers and why it is that we're doing this, I think much of that really anchors back to those key areas. We know that 70% of the drinking water in our area comes from groundwater, and that as we grow and we put more stresses on that system, that is an area of focus for the long-term sustainability of our community. And so the Recycle Water program allows us to address just those things: climate change, regional growth that taps that resource for everyone, as well as being a reflection of our community's values and continuing to hear the importance of keeping water local. At its root and in a cartoon, this is our current recycled water program at its core. We will be collecting used water from industry. That's really the unique and maybe foundational part of the initial start of our program. Of course, as recycled water grows, that could change. Kind of middle shape here is a reflection of an advanced water treatment facility where we will purify that water and then have options for where it can go. So we can go to groundwater recharge, to industry reuse, and kind of keep that cycle going, really closing the loop on how that water is used and maximizing the number of times that we can use that water. And you've heard from us in a variety of ways, but we've really honed in for these conversations around that groundwater recharge piece, recognizing that in so many ways, groundwater recharge is not new, and we get to learn the lessons from other places in Idaho, other places in the region and the world. And at the same time, the application and what we're doing here in Idaho does have some nuance, and we know that we're kind of leading the way on that and want to be hearing from you all as we shape this program. And I think, okay, sorry, too many clicks. Wanted to just follow up and close the loop a little bit from the May meeting, what we heard and how we're bringing some of those pieces back here with you. So specifically to groundwater recharge, what we heard is there is an interest in the studies that we're doing, the details, the considerations and impacts for those. So part of what you'll hear from us today is the evolution of that exact topic so that we can dive into some of the details of the studies, what we're learning. And then I think Melissa mentioned it earlier, we would be coming back post the next National Water Research Institute panel to kind of pull everything together to you all, but certainly today, kind of closing out some of those groundwater recharge study pieces in these conversations. Similarly, we heard from you all kind of your support for continued engagement in these technical decisions. And I think ensuring and asking that we're bringing the right information to you all to inform those decisions. And then I think we spent a lot of time in May talking about community engagement, what we've been doing, how we're going to change that now that the pilot is no longer offering tours, and who all we've been communicating with. And then I think the two sub-bullets there, really the bottom one is what highlighted much of our conversation today, is honing in on the benefits of groundwater recharge and what messaging does resonate there, recognizing we're not hitting the mark, I think, as well as we, or clearly as we could do in our previous communications. And so really looking forward to hearing from you all today. And I think that's super important. If we're going to do this big and innovative thing, we do need to be crystal clear about why it matters and what the benefit is. And that is tied into what we asked of you all. So as we were thinking about this, kind of what are 4 things every Boisean should know about groundwater recharge, kind of in shaping what was shared with you, and asking you all to test these with your communities, your networks. The 4 things, I'm just going to read them. That groundwater recharge helps our community plan for a future where Boise remains a place we can all live, work, and play. 2, groundwater recharge replenishes Boise's water supply and preserves our local environment. 3, the Recycle Water program must have groundwater recharge for daily year-round operation. And 4, groundwater recharge supports economic growth in our community. So kind of not kind of, a spectrum of content there. All of these things are true. All of these things are a part of the program, but in testing the messaging with you all and with your community, we want to understand which pieces of this matter the most to our community. And so with that, I was going to ask you a follow-up question, but really it's not my follow-up question. It's going to be Melissa. We want to, I think if there's any questions for me on the program and kind of the overall intro, I can take those. But as it comes to feedback on these pieces, we'll hold those till Melissa is up here. So.
Any questions off the top of your head? Commissioner Wertz?
Thank you, Chairman. I wasn't sure if you wanted to talk about your memo now or after the survey or the discussion. I wasn't totally clear. I
think,
did have some thoughts on that.
Okay, I think let's do after. I think let's
Okay.
incorporate that
Sounds-
as part of Melissa's discussion.
Okay,
Great
great.
question.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. I'm sorry for not being clear on that.
Any other questions? If not, I'll shoot
Let's
it back.
Jump to Melissa.
Shoot it back over.
Sure. Oh, okay. Excellent. Thank you, Haley. Right. So we asked you to discuss with the community the 4 things that Boiseans should know about groundwater recharge. If you were unable to find an opportunity to discuss with your circles in the community, no worries. We'd also like to hear your personal reactions as well. So you can share those too. Let's talk about the discussion points, and we'll do this one by one, and we'll do this round robin style so we can hear from each of you one by one on these discussion points. So the first discussion point, is your community aware of the city's plans for groundwater recharge, excuse me? Going around the table, I guess we'll start with Chairman Gravatt.
Yes or no? For the most part, it's just not rising to the top level discussion, even when it comes to water renewal, water services. It's just not front facing.
Okay.
I would say no. I know that there would be an interest, but I just don't think that they've been reached.
Okay.
Similarly, not many of my circles were familiar unless they had like technical and they work with the city on public water.
Okay. I'm seeing a theme here. Commissioner
Yeah,
Thornfeld.
not much in my circles. I mean, you can imagine how important this is for teenagers. But I mean, unless I'm sure like kids in AP Environmental Sciences like have more of an awareness of it, but otherwise, no. I did see the TikTok that you guys did though. It was awesome. I loved it.
Thank you. Commissioner Wertz.
Outside of the groundwater program, no. Nobody really knows that I talked to. And I chose to engage a little in more detail. If you just ask the straight up question, you pretty much got to know. But if you talked a little bit about it, people started to have a little bit of, oh, I've heard, maybe I have heard a little bit of something, you know.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Lockett.
The same, no, appreciate that you were more thorough with your homework than I was, but 2 things. I'd love to see the TikTok. I don't have TikTok, but I'll watch it on my kids' account. And marketing's tough, right? Like, who is our audience? Are we really going to target teenagers? Not necessarily. Like, they maybe need to be informed, but like, at what level? Maybe it's cool to care about water, or they get a sticker for their water bottle, but like beyond that, I think we have to determine kind of who our audience is. But no, people don't know. I mean, it's sad to say, but I think there are people who just are unaware, regardless of what we do, of cities' efforts, county, state, government, et cetera. I mean, it's just like the voter turnout, right? It'll be big for November because of the presidential election. But I think like in the school board election, though, I think at least for Boise City was very important and that turnout was like this small. So I guess I'm going on and on to make the point that though we can do all these great things, there's inherently going to be people who will never care regardless of what we do.
Okay.
Unfortunately, but it's true.
Councilmember Corliss, thank you for joining us tonight. Would you like to weigh
Yeah,
in?
thank you. I think within the area in which I live, groundwater is much of a discussion, mainly wrapped around wells. So there is certainly awareness of that. But as far as the city's plans for groundwater recharge,
Mhm.
I would say that they're not as aware of that. Personally, I think we need to give people a why. Why should you care? And I think it's good to highlight, to note, we live in a desert. That's why we need water. That's a big reason why. I mean, we all need water, but we live in a desert. And if we want to continue to live here, we need to manage the water.
Mm.
So I think presenting that, but circling back around, I would say people are mainly unaware of what the city's doing in this area.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember
Mhm.
Corliss. I think you've actually teed up our next question.
And we do have Commissioner Colette online.
Oh, I'm so
joining,
sorry.
Joining virtually.
That's right. Commissioner Collette.
Yeah, no problem. So a couple folks at Boise State, yes. Social Circle, not at all.
All right. Thank you. All right, moving to our next, sorry, I guess we're going to pop up to, here we go. Speaking of the why, what benefits of groundwater recharge most resonate with your community? And what benefits are easiest for them to understand? Let's just go through that one round robin again. We'll start with you.
Sure. So the trying to like A/B test this, the first two of the four options that listed, it sort of resonated talking about the full scope of water. Most people, when they were noodling through or trying to articulate what they knew about how we're doing water, they knew the sort of industrial reuse side. And thought that the closed loop was the closed loop, and that's how we're moving forward. Didn't think much about other ends, and I think that is partly being a victim of our own success, trying to articulate and explain what that process is for so long, that's front of mind for a lot of folks. That's sort of the front face of our water program. And then the other 2 points, the economic development and it's a necessary feature. It felt like trying to explain further something that folks already thought they understood. So it was just adding extra steps to really comprehend what the water system is and what we're doing with it.
And maybe you could elaborate by adding those extra steps. Are you saying that was confusing or helped to articulate?
Mostly just confusing for
Confusing.
folks because they in the working on the water bond, working on a lot of the outreach and education on the pilot program. A lot of folks just conceptualized our water future, our water plan as that industrial reuse, as sort of a closed loop, like sustainable system, and not much on the external other continuing and other features.
Okay. Yeah. Commissioner Pagan, I see you nodding your head.
I probably was part of the problem of trying to explain it to people. I just kind of focused on the closed loop of industrial use rather than kind of thinking more broadly. But kind of looking at the list of people or organizations that were engaged, I noticed not as many maybe tourism industry folks were engaged, where you see a lot of hotels being built in the downtown core of Boise, and that's going to drive a lot of water use. And the topic of conversation of sustainability is very important to the tourism industry. It's become more and more of a discussion point, of a pain point for the tourism industry to be able to speak on things of how communities are solving the issue of an impact like extra people coming into their communities. And so I think that's really important to at least the industry that I work in currently, is just how are they able to help when I was trying to explain it, it just felt like they turned off because they're like, oh, well, this is just for industry. This isn't, we're not being impacted in this in some way. And so that was one aspect of it. And then on my social side, both my parents are retired, so I sometimes hang out with quite a few retired folks who seem to have gotten really into how they can maybe leave a better mark on the world. And a lot of them have talked about xeriscaping and the concern of over watering certain places like their own lawns or anything like that. And so again, it was a conversation of, well, this is great for the industry, but how is it impacting us? Or how can we help to make a better community? And so I think there's a little bit of me thinking that it was just a closed loop and not really thinking broadly.
So it sounds like you're hearing that they would be responsive to more messaging about water conservation.
Yeah.
If that were presented to them, that's something they're.
Absolutely.
they're
I think
engaged
it would be a way of them kind of helping to share out the message of, you know, this community is working to try and be more sustainable, and here's how we're doing that. So even if they have just a few bullet points of, you know, the water that comes from our specific hotel is being recharged into groundwater would be really helpful for them.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Commissioner Morgan.
I think in my circles, climate resiliency comes to as like the largest benefit for our community. I think just really resonates with like my younger circles where we're thinking about having families, we're thinking about like the longevity of our lives here. And so trying to make sure that we are at the forefront of being as mindful of that as possible. And so I think like the words that we often use in public works at our meetings like other cities like have to be responsive to all the different climate adaptations they need to be resilient. I think of like the hurricane corridor, like they don't have this opportunity that we do. And so it just feels exciting that it doesn't all have to be dreadful when we think about the future. And so the climate resiliency aspect just really is a sweet spot, I think, for my community.
And as you were thinking about the four things that Boiseans should know, so you're saying that the climate messaging is something that you think
Yes,
could
I mean,
be-
all four are prominent and helpful, but I definitely think that the first one with like enlarging to climate resiliency is most impactful.
This is what resonated.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Commissioner Thornfield.
Yeah, I agree, you know, with all of that. A lot of in my circles, there's a big disconnect, I think, because people see like our beautiful lakes and our river and all this greenery, and they can water their lawns for however long they want. And then we have the Owyhee Desert, you know? So I think people definitely don't realize it. And like in the second, you know, bullet, the facts on that the groundwater has declined so much was really interesting for me. And a lot of people were like, they didn't realize it. So I think that definitely resonated with them. And then again, the first one, just wanting to be as climate happy and safe as possible. So, yeah.
Thank you. Commissioner Weiss?
Thank you. I deliberately kind of didn't talk to some of my circles, I guess. I talked more to neighbors and things like that. I didn't talk to a very large group of people, but got some interesting and thoughtful feedback. I think most people know we live in a desert and that we're a little bit water limited, but they probably know more about the Colorado River crisis than they know about the declining groundwater in this valley. And so I thought that was interesting. And most people don't know that 70% of their drinking water comes from groundwater either. So there's the baseline for knowledge isn't great, but people, there was an understanding that water is limited and probably will be more limited in the future with growth and with climate changes. I think the really big thing for me, and it honestly didn't occur to me until these conversations, was that you can take this approach and people are going to nod about it, but they highlighted something that Commissioner Thornfeld also highlighted, which is they're looking around going, so we're going to spend all this money and do all this, and then yet people are pouring drinking water on their lawns. There's no restrictions in the valley. And I know that there's not control of that. That's not part of the Public Works. The drinking water side is private and it's totally separate entity. But if you lack, this is me now, not the, if you lack an integrated approach, people are going to look at it and say, this doesn't make any sense. I mean, this doesn't make any sense. We need to do more on this other side, which of course is outside of the purview of Public Works, at least regulatorily it is. But that to me really I just hadn't really thought about it. I thought about water conservation being important, but people who think a little bit about it are like, well, wait a minute, we're going to reuse water before we even start to conserve water. That was kind of the aha for me. And I thought it was meaningful because if the approach doesn't address that, then there's going to be cynicism and frustration with it. I think so. People were generally supportive of the concept of doing it. And the other thing is that I found out in trying to explain to people, and it was actually similar to point was raised earlier, was is it for industry or is it for groundwater recharge? And isn't the groundwater recharge not for the city? It's for everyone? Or is it for the farmers? Or, there was a little bit of, in me explaining it, of hesitation, I guess, on what is the highest goal. And people want to know specifically, if we're going to make this investment, how is it going to work? And I couldn't seal that deal for the conversation. So it was good to have the conversation. And then there was also one person asked about, isn't this going to cost a lot of money? And I didn't have an answer for that either, but it was a good question. And I think it's one that will also have to be addressed. So punchline was great idea, but all these other people, I didn't have anyone who thought it wasn't a great idea, but lots of questions about how it would implement. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, that's encouraging to hear. And thank you for sharing both your personal reflections and what you've heard from your neighbors as well. I'm hearing a recurring theme here about awareness, again, of groundwater recharge. So thank you. Commissioner Lockett, again, the benefits of groundwater recharge that most resonated with the community as you spoke with them, and what was easiest to understand.
Yes, thank you. I have talked also about wells at prior meetings and private wells, right? I mean, wells in people's backyards, wells in my neighbor's backyard. So though I didn't officially survey them about their wells, that is something that comes up at our neighborhood association meetings and as I talk to folks around me, and it's wildly important. So anytime we can make it more personal to folks and tie some of that back, along with Commissioner Wirtz and what you're saying too, I really think it's hard to answer some of those questions when we don't have an answer yet. I mean, I don't think there's been a final determination of how this water is going to be used, obviously, right? Like we're moving through that process. And that's the point of this process. And it's an important iterative process, but folks don't know that. Again, I'm sounding like Debbie Downer, but they want the punchline, they want the cost, they want to know what we're going to do. And so how we market that, I don't know. And I don't have a solid suggestion, but the part that resonated and will continue to resonate with folks is yes, that we live in the desert. The stat that was in our packet about a 10 to 13% decline in groundwater, that really was interesting. Hearing a stat, just a small stat, I don't want big packets, right? Most people, but like that stat really hit me and I was like, whoa, this is serious business. So if you can convince folks how important it is, they may start to care. So that would be kind of my take back would be the wells. And then, yes, we live in a desert, folks know that, but like, how and why does that matter? And then PS, I really liked Haley. I think you might have started a marketing campaign. You were like, let's be crystal clear here. And I was like, oh, crystal clear. Like, this is what we want for our water. And so like, if you can say, let's be crystal clear and here are the facts, it's genius. Write that down.
So you're saying that replenishing groundwater resonated with you and with the folks that you spoke with?
Well, I didn't do my homework, full confession. I
Okay.
didn't formally ask these 4 questions to specific people.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But yes, generally, as we talk about these topics,
Excellent. Thank you.
Melissa, can I ask a question? Chair and commissioners, I was curious, did the issues on the Eastern Snake River Plain and the water rights call, and I know that's a really wonky and technical issue, but did that come up in any of the conversations of like, we're trying to avoid that? No, really. Just curious.
we've talked about it at my office, but that's just around the water cooler.
Thank you.
Okay, and let's not forget our commissioner. It's joining us virtually. Yes, I will.
Look.
Yeah, let's do that.
Thank you. So I would say a pretty similar summary to what we're hearing from everyone else. I found that and this is going to be no surprise, it really depended on the age of the person I was talking to. The younger they were, the more concerned they were about the climate crisis and the future and resiliency. The older they were, the more they're concerned about the tax implications and how much it cost and what was the measurable outcome in terms of what are we getting for what we're paying, and how do we illustrate that, because it's not necessarily a apples for apples kind of comparison, but and it sort of led to some discussion about how do we go about illustrating that makes it meaningful for people who are concerned about the fiscal side of things. But yeah, I think it's difficult to say that any one of those issues is the most important, because I think as we've got this group of very diverse generations, they have very different values. And I think we need to be speaking to all of them. And I think those 4 bullet points do a good job of conveying those to all of those groups.
Appreciate that feedback. Thank you. And Councilman.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know if I have a lot more to add. I do appreciate Commissioner Wernz and your discussion on the conservation. I remember growing up here and remember when you have to water your yard, if you have an odd number, you water these days. If your street address ends in an even number, you water on these days. And it seems like that was conservation back 20, 30 years ago that we don't even have today, but yet now we're trying to talk about the importance of the recharge. So I think that's a good point, that I think sometimes it doesn't seem important because it's pretty easy. You turn on your tap, the water comes out. And until we show, I think people understand climate change. I think more importance on the desert, but until we show that there's a problem, and then seeing that on how we're doing conservation efforts, I think is a real critical piece of this too. Yeah, thank you.
All right. And finally, the last question here, just generally, and we may have covered a little of this as well, but if we haven't touched on it yet, just what are some of the most frequently asked questions that you're receiving in the community about groundwater recharge? So Commissioner Chair Gravatt, if you would.
Most of the questions were something like, what is groundwater recharge?
Awareness again. Okay.
So yeah, still just there's just some sort of a short circuit in the full story all the way through.
Yeah.
And again, it just seemed like victim of our own success in messaging what the recycled water portion of the overall portfolio is. That's what's hammered in for the most part.
Okay. Thank you.
I think one of the biggest questions that I got was how will it affect me? Whether it was a business or whether it was a consumer or person. I think the wildfires and the month-long 100-degree weather that we had this summer really pushed that kind of question to the forefront, because a lot of the community that I've talked to was really, really concerned about how dry it got and how much water we were using on wildfires. And then that kind of brought up this conversation. So I think the community wants to be involved, but they just don't know how it's going to impact them and how they can help.
And did you find the 4 things were helpful in that conversation, or was there something maybe more that would have enabled you to better help them understand the benefits
to them?
To be honest, I don't know that I used the bullet points or the data in the bullet points as well as I could have. I think that just understanding what the recharge program is and how it might impact them would help them understand how maybe they can do more or something along those lines. They also asked how much is it and when will it start?
Fair questions. Excellent. Thank you. Commissioner Morgan.
So I did the dorky nerdy thing of writing down all the questions. So I will just say them so that way you can hear the dumb and smarter technical questions that my friends have.
Thank you.
So why does it have to be super clean water was one. How much does this project cost? Where are these funds coming from? What's the timeline for execution? Where is it going to be stored? And it means all the things that we pull out of the water, all those nasty solids, where are those going? Is it this, do we need to be concerned about this as humans? That we have to now be thinking in the cyclical cycle was another question, because just in terms of are there more things that we could be doing that are also on this scale? Is there long-term research that this has been based off of? We want to know the other communities that you were looking at. And then will the corporations and industries that we're working with shoulder a good portion of this cost, since this is a service for them? So those were a handful of the questions that I was able to capture.
Thank you. These are perceptive questions from an inquisitive group. Appreciate you sharing those. Commissioner Thornfeld.
So I also came across some questions, a lot of where things are going to be stored, and also a lot to do with the industries, how are industries using this water, and why, is it so important for us to take the water to be reused from them? So personally, if I was able to see this many gallons of water but were used from these industries in this year, I think that would really resonate with me, because I imagine it's a pretty dang big number. And also I don't know how to kind of explain this, but how is it kind of impacting us as humans, and is my everyday life going to change? Is my water more susceptible to contamination, that it's all being stored here and less so in the river? So a lot of stuff like that,
Okay. Commissioner Wards.
I summed up 4. How does it work? Where is it going to be? I guess it's 5. Does it affect nearby wells? How much does it cost to build it? Who makes sure the water is safe?
I don't have any further questions, but I think these are great questions. These are the questions that we've asked as commissioners through the process, and it's it's good to know that other people have similar questions. If we're at the end, could I just clarify, please, one thing that I said? I felt badly when I said, I don't remember exactly how I said about teenagers. What I meant, marketing to them would be the technical side of that. Not that we don't care, and we absolutely want all the teenagers to understand and be good citizens. That's what I talk to my kids about all the time. So I just wanted to clarify that. I'm a little embarrassed about the way that came out. And Commissioner Collette said it too, we need to communicate to all people, and that's certainly what I meant. But when it comes to marketing the technical facts or who we're targeting on certain information and benefits, it's we need to use our resources, our marketing resources well, is more of what I was trying to say, sending this information where it will be received versus not. So I'll stop right there. I just felt like I needed to clarify that. I feel kind of
Thank you.
badly.
I think I
you.
understand your point. Targeting people, marketing to people under 18, it can be just tactically a little challenging.
I'm not in marketing, so I don't know. But yes, I just want to be clear. So
Excellent.
Thank
Thank you. Let's see. Let's go to Commissioner Collette.
Sorry, just to that point, it took me years to get my friends to get me on the TikTok bandwagon. I finally did. I would have loved to have seen that TikTok. And I'd say, and I'm approaching 40, and easily 65 to 70% of my friends are on TikTok as well. So I think it's still a great marketing tool. The questions that I heard were very similar to what has already been communicated. How much does it cost? Who are the folks who benefit? And how much of a difference does this actually make?
Very succinct. Thank you. And council member,
Yeah,
your thoughts?
yeah, I don't have any other questions that haven't already been raised.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for both sharing your personal insights as well as your conversations with the community. We really appreciate you engaging in the community and bringing this back to us, and as well as your own reflections. At this point, I'm going to turn it now over back to Brandon Beechin for the Recycled Water Program.
Those were great questions, by the way. So I'm excited to hear all those because this is a big project and it's not going to be easy, but that's why we're here, to do awesome things together. So I'm going to do a little review on the program, and before we get into community engagement that we did, we'll also be covering. So we just finished the advanced water treatment pilot for the last 15 months. We've collected over 40,000 analytes, so samples, and then also have ran 5 million gallons of water through this pilot facility. It's been a labor of love, and it's been quite an amazing project to be a part of. We tested 3 main technologies at the pilot site: an ultrafiltration, a reverse osmosis, and an ultraviolet advanced oxidation process. And then along with that, we also had some sub-pilot projects that would look at like a step B, let's say, that would also test other contaminants removal for, as we found new contaminants, we would test for those, and also we would work on conditioning for groundwater recharge. Overall, we had 7 different city work groups work on this project to make it successful, which was great. We really brought in a diversity of internal people to help us out. And also we had 7 interns that we hired during this project. And 2 of those started their career all with this project, one an engineer, another one a water quality technician. 3 were able to get into a master's program based upon the work that they used. Of course, they had a lot of other things going on, but the water pilot obviously helped with that. And then 1 is finishing her undergraduate, and another one just said, I want to be a civil engineer and build freeways. And I was like, great. Not everybody can be in the water industry, and we need roads too. So I hope it works out. Yeah, so I got a lot of buttons here. So recent highlights on the for our program. We recently issued a RFQ for contractor partners. So we're moving forward with growing our team and getting contractors involved so that we can move forward with building a new facility. We also launched an advisory group to gather more community values on water quality. And that'll be, we'll talk about that here in more detail. And then we also developed a draft community benefits policy, which outlines additional community-wide investments that we will make as part of the Recycled Water Program. And we look forward to engaging with the Public Works Commission on this policy in the future. Let's see here. We also just got our NWRI, National Water Research Institute, report issued. So that, just in case we don't know it, remember what the NWRI is. They're an independent panel of national experts who have reviewed our program and provide feedback on our progress and decisions. So I do believe their report has been published, and we printed copies, which should be in your packet for you to review. So key takeaways from the previous NWRI panel. The NWRI panel confirmed the program's approach to our decision-making. And then the panel reviewed the preliminary results from the advanced water treatment pilot. Phase 1, we have phase 2, that data will be coming out and presented to the next NWRI panel in spring of 2025. And those results and their influence or review of those will help determine our design of our new facility. And then also the NWRI panel is working with us on our groundwater recharge site, characterization, and modeling. And we look forward to having them review that progress of the groundwater studies at the next panel too. So NWRI also offered some feedback on community engagement. One of the recommendations was to collect public data. And then what we've done is on our tours, did a pre and post survey, asking questions up front, and then seeing how they respond after the tour, which was great. A little callback to our solids plan or our solids group. We did I couldn't believe it. The solids participation in composting in the city of Boise is like ridiculously high. And it's in the 90s, is that right? So as kind of a initial get to know you, we would do this survey, raise your hand if you're from Boise, do you compost? And almost everybody raised their hand. I couldn't believe it. It's real. People love composting in Boise and they are all about it. So that is a fact. So we will continue to have conversations with these panelists, specifically around groundwater recharge, also outside of just these quarterly meetings, and work together on addressing any issues that we might run into. What we have here is our path. So some of our questions was, when's that water coming? Well, we have our initial schedule here. We have two timelines that are present. One is the facility where we already have our site selected, and we're currently working on a notional design. So very, very basic design, and then into construction with the goal of having water somewhere around 2029 into 2030. Someone updated the slide on me. We're pushing for 2029, but we'll see what we can do. The recharge facility where the water will be injected into the groundwater. That site has not been selected, but we're working on doing that with your help in 2025. And then that design and construction will follow right along with the project. Okay, community engagement. This has been, might be my favorite part of the Recycle Water program. It's been a pleasure to be one of the few people to work on one of the most advanced water treatment pilots in the United States. Very few of them has existed, and even fewer exist at the scale that we're doing it. So, but with that being said, getting to know our residents and talking about water and getting out in front and sharing the hard work that everybody's doing, it's been a real pleasure. So. Community engagement, these are our target goals, right? Building community awareness, hosting and advertising our pilot tours, attending local events, and we've even involved the local news features. So we hear you. We got more work to do. I'm excited about that part. So our time together since May, since we last met, we've had over 70 organizations tour at the facility. And then there's been over 600 attendees. I would think that we've had a little more. Those are the formal ones that have signed in. We've had a lot in the past month, especially come in. I did 2 weeks ago. I had 5 tours in 1 week. And if they need to see it, we make it happen. So we've talked to a lot of folks, and it's been really great to hear their perspectives on this. So some of the organizations that we met with, key organizations here was the Spanish-speaking community. We also hosted a tour for a regional conference of Pacific Northwest Clean Water Association. We had to shut the bus down because there was too many people wanting to go. We ended about 60 that came just at one time. There's some pictures of me yelling at a crowd. It was in here. It's just so they could hear me in the back. We also had the National Water Reuse leaders come out. We made time for them on a Sunday, and we had a great time with that also. And along with Duck Valley and Shoshone-Bannock High Schools who came recently. somehow in there, we made time to win an award, which was very exciting. This award was from the Recycle Water, from the Excellence and Reuse and Recovery for moving recycled water forward in the Pacific Northwest region. During this time, this was at the PNCWA conference, Pacific Northwest Water Association, is that right? Got it, thank you. And then we gave 2 presentations while we were there on our program, focusing on the community engagement, technology, and future goals. And we also sat on a panel for open forum questions. Okay, so what's next? What we will continue to invest into our key partners. A couple of those in particular will be Idaho Department, IDEQ and IDWR. So Idaho Department of Environmental Quality and Idaho Department of Water Resources. And both have toured a pilot recently, which was great. They had a lot of excitement and questions. And then at the same time, we will be sharing our pilot phase 2 results with them, and then giving them updates on our groundwater site characterization and results. Those 2 agencies, one of the questions that we had was who's going to be responsible for water quality. Those 2 agencies will be our final permitting requirements and partners. So we do have an answer for one of those questions. And then we also will be presenting at the Ada County Water Summit coming up shortly, I do believe this month or next couple of weeks. So along with our 6-month advisory group that we'll be talking about shortly, as I already promised. And then we have our final National Water Research Institute panel review coming up too. Okay, advisory group. The advisory group is going to run from September to February of 25, September 24 to February 2025. Some of our key outcomes here that we're looking for are the purified water quality priorities for a recycled water facility, the review of prioritization of community benefits policy, and validation of community drivers for purified water uses. So this advisory group will meet once a month for 6 months. And then we'll be asking these questions. Each meeting will focus on a particular topic, and we'll do our best to stay on that topic before we move on to the next one. Okay. Our advisory group or community partners represented here is, as we can read, the medical community, transportation, industry, and commerce. We're very intentional in selecting a diverse group of community representatives who are not experts in water treatment to hear a community-based perspective that is different from the other sources of feedback, such as the National Water Research Institute. Question period.
Any questions from the commission? Commissioner Lockett?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And is there a list of these members posted online? I just wanted to dig deeper and to see who these folks are.
If there's not one online, I can get you
Could
a
you
list, no
email
problem.
us? Yeah,
Yeah,
or the link. That'd be
absolutely.
super. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Morgan?
Thanks, Chair. This might have been said at a past meeting, or I'm just not familiar, but did we decide if the the place where we return the water is injection or if it's surface water? It sounds like it was injection.
Right. And
Okay.
we will, we're going to, due to time, we will skip ahead a few filler slides and get into that
Oh,
actual.
love it. Okay, cool.
Yes, actual questions. So,
And kudos on winning awards, guys. You guys are amazing.
yeah. We might have to get a trophy case at the new facility, or at least a shelf. That'd be nice. So, okay.
Commissioner
So-
Werns?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Chair. You followed up a little bit on the IDWR and water resources, and that there's an arrangement for them to collaboratively review the project. Do you know yet, as the city, that there is a legal authority for the type of injection well that you're proposing currently without a change to the rules?
Chair, Commissioner, that appears to be a question I'm going to answer. Both sides. I would say with reasonable confidence. So those agencies are, we met with them earlier this month. They're reviewing that now, and we have a meeting with them scheduled at the end of, okay, we met in September. It is now October. We're meeting later in October to confirm or clarify if there is that, like, we're operating under the assumption and direction that there's that authority.
Quick follow-up. Thank you, Chair. Does it matter, at least from your legal review, or your, maybe it's not a legal review, but does it matter whether or not the, it's underground injection or rapid or infiltration for whether or not you'd be able to do it? I mean, has that been part
Yeah.
of the discussion?
Chair, Commissioner, yes, there is. I think there is a difference there. Maybe I should not answer that so quickly. The agencies involved would change. If it's injection, we have both DWR and DEQ. If it's infiltration, we're DEQ. Some of the questions come into the groundwater quality rule, and I think that that is, that may not be changed depending on the method. So I think the answer to your question is no, it does not matter.
Great, thank
Yeah.
you. I just want to say I'm glad that you're pursuing it, because that could be quite a trip up. And I know it sounds like there's a lot of work going on it. I just was curious about it because it's something that I encountered a lot of problems with in my career. So thank you.
Yeah, Chair, Commissioner Moritz, appreciate that. I think, yeah, I think there's clarity of all parties on what's needed to continue this path. And I think we'll know a bit more at the end of October.
Commissioner Pagan?
Chair, in the packet, are these the sites that are being proposed? Okay, just curious.
Yes, Chair and Commissioner, I apologize for my lack of formalities, but yes, and we're going to get to those in this next section. So I know we're chomping at the bit for this, and it is exciting information. So give me 1 second to see what we want to edit for time.
Just skip all of these and go right to the 32. Go straight
Okay.
to this one.
Great. I'm going to mash my slides here real quick. Oh, boy. That's it. Thank you. Okay. So with all the anticipation of the groundwater and information that we'll be providing, let's get right into it. So how do we decide where to recharge? We were looking at the area that we're going to show on these maps coming up, and it is technically feasible to recharge groundwater at each site. Our recharge method that we'll be looking at today and more likely moving forward will be underground injection. So your input will help us understand the benefits of what the benefits are of recharging water at each site, and then how those benefits how those benefits are reflected with community values, and then also cost, and how might cost influence the prioritization of those benefits. So I will not have numbers today, but if we look at cost as trade-offs as of right now, more so than like a unit of money, I think we'll be able to get through this. Okay, we are comparing two potential groundwater recharge sites, and we're helping to get your feedback on the benefits of recharging at each site by looking at where the water flows, how quickly the water flows, and the cost for each site. So a key outcome that we're looking for here is the Public Works Commission on input, or your input will inform the selection of the groundwater recharge site that is aligned with the community values and support long-term benefits and programs. So, and we will be following up with a meeting in 2025 with our final findings for you. Okay, so these steps are the technology steps. They do not cover community expectations or cost analysts that factor into the decision making. So We go in, we take our ground samples of rocks and soil, and then we look at those to see the chemical composition of those rocks. And then we take those rocks and soils into a laboratory, and then we do a geochemical analysis on there, how to understand how recharged water will impact or mix or change anything that is in that previous sample. And then we can take that information and we put it into a groundwater model to understand that relationship. And then we can also use that to see where the water flows or where it does go or where it doesn't go. And then eventually that will go into our treatment design. Okay, in your packets, you have this aerial map here. And just for reference, in the kind of top left corner, we have the Boise Airport. And the area we're going to be looking at is south of the Boise Airport. So that undeveloped and desert area south of Gowan and before the Pleasant Valley Butte, which I just learned the other day, that's a butte. So I didn't know what to call it. I was like a hill, but yeah. Okay, we're looking at these two initial areas for our area of interest, and they are in green there, and they are south towards that Pleasant Valley Butte. One a little closer to Freight Street there at the I-84. And then these are the actual sites that we're going to be going in a little deeper detail with. Site A is a little closer to Pleasant Valley Road. And then site B is closer to the industrial park, which also happens to have our little star of where our new recycled water facility will be located. Okay. Do we want to go through these? Okay, let's do that. In these next few slides, we summarize all the work that we've put into these studies and how much we have learned about groundwater conditions on our site. So we have a little animation here that we'll do. So as we get started, we kind of go down, right, subsurface, and we're looking at initially as we kind of scrape the surface here, we encounter a giant layer of basalt. So if you're familiar with the Black Cliffs out towards Lucky Peak, that giant layer, 150-foot layer, continues south all the way under our sites and further. And what we've done is we put in two initial pilot wells, one at each site, and then we've gone down 600 and 800 feet, and then we take our core samples along the way to see what that soils and rocks look like. And then as we go, we start getting a little bit more information as we collect those samples and get a little better detail on exactly what is below our feet here. So as we keep going, we'll keep clicking. So we see our top layer there that's dark and very thick is a basalt layer. And then we also have a lot of quartz and feldspar. And then there's even a volcanic ash layer down there. Oops, let me go back one. And then we can also get a more accurate level of our groundwater along the way. Okay, our groundwater quality is incredibly high. The native water meets drinking water standards. And we are running additional testing to prevent any negative geochemical reactions. So our pilot water that we've been putting out is at a 5.5. So one thing that we would have to do before we do groundwater injection is change that pH in our water up to match that native groundwater. We've also been looking at how the groundwater flows. So as it comes in from a natural occurrence, say a river or a lake, it goes down through those layers and then it travels on its own across different layers throughout that subsurfaces. And we can also, I'm sorry, I'm going to go back one more time because I'm doing two hands here. We can also project to a certain level of accuracy how long and how fast it travels. Okay. The recycled water program, we're getting into the model now. So there's already been a Treasure Valley groundwater model, and that model is in the gray squares that we see in these pictures here. Those grid patterns are 1 mile squares, And our sites A and B, we've gone into greater detail there, and we've gone down to 82.5 feet. And as far as our radius away from our wellheads to see exactly in a higher detail of what's at those sites. When we compare the Treasure Valley model to our model, which is Treasure Valley model is on the left, the one on the right, we can see our two wells that we have done. And inside those wells, you can see there's some different colors. So the Treasure Valley model had these 6 layers that was projected, and our wells were not, they were saying, well, there might be something quite a little bit different down there. We're seeing more and more layers. So as we did the research and then ran the model, we could see that we ended up with 13 layers. So a high definition look at exactly what's going on under that ground. And then we can also see that based on the colors, brown is low permeability, so like low water movement or low water available. And then as we come over to our side, we see a lot more moderate to high permeability. So we can see how that water moves through those layers. Oh my goodness. I'm gonna need some help. A little help here. There we go. Got it. Rough day, I guess. It's the end of my day, so bear with me. So in addition to the proximity of the withdrawal sites, our site B is co-located above the South Boise groundwater management area. This is a fairly new information to me. I'm involved in a lot of water, and I didn't realize that there was until recently a 17 square mile designated in 1994 to be an area of continuing loss of water, and has been designated as such. So what is that Southeast Boise groundwater management area? Well, we've said when it became in 1994, it became the groundwater management area that sets in some restrictions on the water that's there. So the folks have preserved the water supply for an at-risk groundwater area. Those water levels in that area have been declining significantly since the late 90s. Increased water, basically due to increased water usage and limited natural recharge. So that 12 inches of rain that we get every year, or any kind of river flows that are coming in, are not putting enough water back in there. So there's been conservation measures and recharge projects have been implemented in that area. Okay, now we're getting into the model. Where's this water going and how fast? A couple things we need before we talk about the model. The model is a computer simulation, and it's based on the data that we provide. So that data is what we use for this model are today's known pumping rates, so water going in and also water coming out. We also have natural recharge conditions that happen, and then along with any other outlying sites or studies that might go along with the natural occurring or withdrawals of the area that we're modeling. So the accuracy is only as good as today. And then near-term dates, so if we project out, the shorter time frames are more accurate, and the further out you go, they have less accuracy. Okay, side A for our flow model results. So side A here is the one that's a little closer to Pleasant Valley Road. And right there in the square with the little flag indicates our well area. What we see here is some rings, and this is the flow results of where that water will go at site A. So initially what happens is you put that water in the ground and it balloons out. So it creates this circle effect because it's basically pressurized and it's going out equally in that area. And then eventually any areas of impact that would change that current come into play. So from 0 to 10 years, we have that first initial ring, and that's more, the outer part would be closer to 10 years, that darker blue, and then on out to 10 to 25 years and so forth. And where we see this teardrop effect happen, that's where we see our first large commercial well withdrawing water. So at the 25 to 40 year mark, roughly, they will see that water is traveling more so because it's getting pulled out and it's caught in that current. Perfect. Site B, slightly different. We're more over to east there. And then our flag shows our Site B also with our recycled water facility on it. A couple things to note here. We have those same timelines in the outer rings there, but our site is also over the Southeast Boise groundwater management area. So as we put that water in, we have a chance to impact that area. And then also we could co-locate our injection site with our facility there. The quick difference here real quick, these two sites are about 1.5 miles apart. So to go from the facility to site A, we're looking at putting in a pipeline to get over there. Okay. There's also the teardrop that's happening on site B here in the top right corner. We see that is caused mostly because of some industrial withdrawal wells. So up there around that Micron technology. And then eventually at that 70, 150 year mark, we're kind of back out towards that same well that initially pulled water from site A. Great. Okay, so the water itself, there is an underground current that takes place that pulls that water naturally. So if we give it enough time and we just leave it in there and no one touches it any further than what we already are, we'll see this water travel to the southwest towards the Snake River. Once again, the estimate here is around 1,000 years. The computer model becomes less accurate as we go out further. But you can see kind of where that water flows for both sites. One site A being in the blue and site B being in the green. Just for reference on this, that flow there, our current water that we use, the 70% that comes from groundwater, 30 million gallons a day that City of Boise processes, goes into the Boise River, and it takes about 60 days to get to the ocean. So that water goes out and leaves in about 60 days. When we look at these two sites, as far as keeping our water local, we're having a significant volume of water and time that's more in our community than it currently is when it leaves down the river. Okay, discussion. And I think Melissa's going to do these discussions for us.
Mr. Chair, could I ask a technical question before we get into discussion? I want to make sure I
Yeah.
understood. I was following you. You're doing a great job.
Okay,
If we could go back, yeah, this slide's fine.
Okay,
Or
let's do it.
what- Yeah. So my question is, are you saying we'll have, okay, so it doesn't take 40 to 70 years for the water to travel back to the original site from which it was drilled? I think the answer is no. I think you're saying that
yeah,
our groundwater volume will grow and grow and grow, and then in 70 years, it'll be
Yeah.
this big, as opposed to this
so
big.
we're going to think
that
about
right?
it close. We're going to think about it as like a particulate or a drop of water.
Okay,
And when I put a drop of water on that flag in the ground, it will naturally push out because I'm putting more and more water in. So it's like a water balloon filling up. And then that water droplet will eventually move further and further away from its original injection site. So it does kind of move to those outer rings over time.
So Chair,
Yeah.
Commissioner, that is
Commissioner, sorry, yeah.
that particulate water taking,
Yep.
25 to 40 years to move from where we put it in the ground to that ring. I guess 40 years would be the outside of that ring.
Right.
So that is, I think you asked that specific question. Yes, that is
Yes.
it's not so much as we're not showing here like an enlargement of the water, more like where is the water moving and how long does it take for our drops of water to move to the next place?
okay.
Chair, Commissioner, appreciate the question. Hopefully, are we getting there? I know it's a little
You
weird.
guys are just way smarter than me.
I don't know about that,
This
but
is your life.
it's complicated because we think it's in 3D underground.
Mhm.
So it's a different dimension than like just pouring water on the table. It also goes up and out and down. So it's just a new way of thinking about that most of us don't ever think about, including myself until this past year. So we're all new. Okay, great.
Commissioner, just a couple of questions.
Councilmember?
For clarification.
Yeah.
This drinking water well, is that a Veolia well?
Chair Commission, Councilperson, yes, it is.
Okay, and I'm assuming the industrial wells are owned by Micron? Or are they,
They are co-located close to their site. One of them is a very good chance to be, I don't have the exact ownership of those,
That's
but
okay.
more than likely, yes. There's also the other triangles that are there on that. There's one to the left, kind of center, is also a Veolia well. And then there's one little dot down there all by itself that's not flagged because it was kind of out of this range of accuracy that the model was projecting. So, and then it also the natural occurring current flows kind of away from it.
a couple slides back, you had mentioned that with the groundwater management area,
Yeah.
probably even a couple more, that right there, increased water use is becoming an issue since the late 90s, and that's in that specific area.
Correct.
Yeah, and so limited natural recharge, nothing's really changed per se, because I mean, there's just not enough water for what's being taken
That is
out.
correct.
Is that correct?
Yep. And
Okay.
if it becomes worse, they go into a critical stasis or status, and then they shut down any new water rights to that area.
And
And they
who
can also
manages that again?
limit the withdrawal. Sorry.
Is that Department of Water Resource that sets
Yes.
that? Yeah,
Mhm.
okay, perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Commissioner
Rebecca?
Moore?
Thank you, Chair. So I think just a couple of, I'm guessing there are a few technical questions like Commissioner Lockett had too. I just wanted to make sure I understood a couple of things about the charts. So are you saying is this modeling based on underground injection wells at these sites?
That is correct.
And what's the assumptions underlying that they're pumping at a certain rate to create this, or is this a modeling of a drop of water? I guess that I
Yeah.
just understand, because I think it would be different depending on what you assume on the hydraulic head that you're putting on into the groundwater, right? You
Chair
would have
Commissioner, you're
different movement
absolutely
based on-
correct. And I have Dan is on the phone a friend, but Dan is the one that actually ran the
Okay.
model, and I did
Okay.
skip the volume of injection for the model. So
Yeah.
it's let Dan come in here, phone a friend.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. So these models are based on a 6.1 MGD in the ground, and you set up the simulation so that you are injecting that and it goes right into the water table. And then with all of that water that comes in, each of those, you track all of these particles. So it's a particle tracking based on that bulk of water that's in the ground. And so you can have, you get to see the behavior, if you will, of that water as it moves from our injection site through the subsurface and integrates, from our site in our zone of influence into the regional groundwater.
Thank you. Can I follow up too? So if you're able to change the million gallon per day number and you get a different rate of migration, if you will?
To a certain degree, you can see how in the north, I'm going by memory here, but in the northeast, you kind of mound up right there where you don't have that even spacing of the circles. At that point in time, the influence that we have at 6.1, you get overshadowed by the massive water, the quantity of water that's in the natural system. So where our injection rate within reason, where we influence will be within this sphere. So moving over to like the Veolia wells or the industrial wells at Site B, will influence that. We won't have an influence. The further we are from our sites, the less distance we have because our signal is muted by the overall signal of the groundwater system. And we're a part of the Snake River groundwater, so it's not even the Boise River right now. Boise is a part of the Snake. So we're talking about a massive, massive groundwater resource.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask one more? Okay, thanks, Chair. And so you might have said the assumption on the depth of the injection wells, but are those injection wells is that a variable depth or is that a set depth for the model? And is that on the same rough level that the commercial and drinking water wells are at?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So our model, it goes to the depth, well, it goes below, but where we parameterize is up to the 800 feet of our test wells. So that's where we know information. The particles are put through the entire saturated thickness. So at site A, it's about 300 feet below ground surface to the 800 feet. And we track all of those particles. What's shown, and Brandon mentioned this, is that there's a difficulty in visualizing a 3D space in 2 dimensions. So for simplicity's sake, at this point, we're only looking at one layer, at layer 10. So it's a depth that interacts with that Pleasant Valley well that's shown, that is shown where the water goes to. The Veolia wells, they also have screens. They have another well, whichever 10-mile well or Pioneer. I can't remember which one's which here, but you can see that this other blue triangle is still within that 70 to 150 years. And the reason that our water isn't hitting that is because their screen where they take water in, because a well is not a continuous screen. It has a screened area and then a solid area and a screened area just based on aquifer hydraulics. So where our water is, we're evaluating right now, it's that water's not moving into the areas that are available in this well. It's not receiving water, but it is moving to the well that is screened in the area that we're taking water from, or that's showing that all of our water is moving towards. So it's important here to note that this is a static condition. It's one snapshot. There's the conditions that this is simulated on is just 1 month's condition. And as our modeling becomes more and more sophisticated, we'll be moving away from that static condition and into a transient condition. So a condition through time. And once we get into that transient condition, the predictive capacity of our model increases. But right now, this is just a snapshot from a single point in time, if you will.
Thank you.
Commissioner Collette?
Thanks, Chair Gravatt. And I'm sorry if this is an ignorant question because I don't really understand the workings of Micron, but with the massive expansion that they're doing right now, are we going to, does the site, will the closer site be impacted by any work that's happening at Micron, or are they just at such different levels and not close enough proximity that it doesn't make a difference?
Chair, Commissioner, I'm not sure if we could completely answer that right now without knowing kind of how their water use will change with their expansion. So they've got a variety of water supplies. They do their own injection program to maintain that groundwater. So I think there's multiple factors there, but I don't know that we could answer that without some additional information from Micron on their water use, but nothing that we've flagged that would dramatically change the outcome or direction of our program.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lockett?
Thank you, Chair. I had a similar question about site selection, like will data, test results, scientific analysis, will that select the site ultimately, or are there less tangible, less technical pros and cons of both locations?
Chair, Commissioner, absolutely. We're going to talk about those with Melissa on these site selections. So we'll get into those less technical benefits with these sites.
Yeah, and I would just add, the process we use at the city is called a business case evaluation process, and we take the capital annual O&M costs, and then we also look at what we refer to as our risks and benefit costs, which are things that we try to quantify. We're not funding those per se, but we use those to try to create a differential amongst alternatives. And so we're very intentional about trying to monetize those risks and benefits, and that's one of the things that hopefully you all help us identify some of those risks and benefits. That's the next conversation.
Melissa?
And Chair, just a comment. We're at 5:44. I want to be respectful of the commissioner's time. If we don't get through the whole discussion, I think that's okay because we can come back in November and maybe at the beginning of that meeting, continue the dialogue. It also probably could give you time to think about things. So I intentionally did not want to go overboard on the time because I want to be respectful.
Okay, should we continue with the discussion? Okay, great. Thank you. Excellent segue, Commissioner Lockett. We're going to talk a little about benefits here. So we know that recharging water benefits our community, and now we want to understand if the degree of the benefit is universal or if it changes based on what we understand about where the groundwater is being recharged. So this is where we seek your input. In this discussion, yes? Oh, yes, I do. Sorry. There we go. We're going to talk about the benefits of each site. And I want to point out to you that you have in front of you some printouts now of the slides you've seen. So you have site A, site B in front of you. In case you need to refer to those, keep those handy. And this time we don't need to necessarily go round robin style. So let's talk about site B first. So go back a slide. Did I go one? Oh, I'm sorry. I did. Thank you. How'd I do that? Discussion. Oh, it was up. Okay, great. Let's start with site A. Let's talk about the benefits that you see in recharging at site A. So this is, again, this is the site we first went through. And let's go ahead and talk about those benefits.
Well, I guess maybe to help prompt some further thought for us, what are often some of the primary considerations for site selection on the technical side? And then what are some of the externalities that are commonly considered or commonly results of selecting a site for groundwater recharge?
Right. Thank you. And so what we've seen here is a few of the considerations you might want to take is, first of all, we looked at the direction of the flow of the groundwater. We can see that there are some drinking water wells as well. We can see that the groundwater may not be moving toward a groundwater management area. So these are some things to take into consideration. On this particular site, I think we also pointed out that this is not currently owned by the city of Boise. And it's about, what did we say, 1.5 miles from our future recycled water facility, which is on the site B, which is the property that the city of Boise does own. So hopefully that can kind of give you a frame of reference for some of the benefits you might think about.
Yeah, and so having a site like this, does it make the surrounding area more appealing for certain kinds or certain patterns of development or use over others, or does it have less of an impact on those sorts of decisions than I might be imagining?
Chair, excuse me, probably less of an impact given that the location is in such proximity to the Boise Airport. And the area typically around Site A, for example, to the north, I want to say is mostly owned by the airport. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the ability to develop is probably pretty limited from a commercial and or residential.
Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Morgan.
correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like site B has a bigger surface area that it's covering than site A. Because there's like overlap of site A when there wasn't as much overlap. Am I misinterpreting? Okay.
So your point is that the the impact of the actual infiltration is larger at site B,
Yes.
meaning the extent of the infiltration, or I'm sorry, the injection and the flow out is
Impacts a
larger.
bigger area than
Yep.
site A.
Correct.
Yes, I worded that very
Yeah,
oddly.
same scales, so yes.
Okay,
Yep.
thanks.
Let's jump to Commissioner Colette and then we'll go around the room.
Thanks, Chair Gravett. So my question is, if we own Site B and we've got proximity at Site B, what is the benefit of not using Site B?
Thank you, Commissioner Collette. And we will discuss that benefit next when we get to Site B. I think you're right. You're on the right track. So for Site A, again, the question for the commission is, what are the benefits that you might see at Site A?
And if you're not seeing any, that's okay too.
Commissioner Pagan?
I had a question about the Boise Airport. Do you see any issue with the potential of expansion at the Boise Airport impacting like Site A at all?
Chair, thank you for the question. We've been working with the airport. We don't think that would be an issue. If we were to try to do some type of like infiltration, for example, I think that would be a different question, because typically you need much more land area. In theory, there could be standing water. That's not something that airports are interested in having close by. So that would be a bigger issue, but the fact that we're injecting, I think, has much less of an impact on the airport.
So there wouldn't be any concern about the ground being unstable or anything like that, that they would be worried about landing planes on or anything to that effect?
Not that I'm aware of. Good question, though. Not that I'm aware of. It's something we can note and double check, but I don't think there would be. But that would be an example of a risk that if there was an
Sure.
impact, we'd want to know about it. That's a
Sure.
really good point.
And I had a second question. So we talked about the groundwater management area. Is it a concern to be in a site like that? Or would it, I guess I kind of, when I was listening to the conversation, I kind of took it as a positive that we might be potentially increasing the water in that area, but maybe I'm wrong in thinking that.
So looking at, I'm going to go to Site B here. I think you're referring to Site B. So that's one of the features of Site B that Brandon pointed out, is that some of the water does flow into the Southeast Boise groundwater management area. Whereas you may see here in Site A that the water is not modeled to flow into that area. Was that
Right.
your question?
Yeah,
and I
and just,
think-
is that good or bad? I just assumed it would be okay. It would be a good idea that you get extra water in that area.
We would love to hear that from, yes, so you're right on track. So this is the part of the conversation where we would like to see what are the benefits that you perceive, and exactly, right on track there. So perhaps we can put a benefit on the board. Is that something that you're seeing as a benefit of Site B? Is that flow to the groundwater management area?
I would think so. If there's a major concern, especially with the expansion of Micron, possibly taking more of that water resource in that area, to have an abundance of water would be helpful.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Pagan. You have gotten a benefit on the board for us. And what we're going to do, by the way, let me just preview here. We're going to do a whiteboard exercise here. Let's identify some benefits, and then we're going to actually let you get up, stretch your legs a little, and we're going to do a little whiteboard exercise here that kind of helps us rank these benefits a little. So this is great. Is this helpful to the commission to kind of? Yes, okay. So while we're here on Site B, we can talk about the benefits that you see here at Site B. Any others?
I think there were some other points. I'll go to Commissioner Wernz and then we'll continue through.
Thank you, Chair. Site B, I think maybe it was already mentioned, the benefit of ownership by the city already and co-location with the facility also. So you wouldn't have to have a pipeline, a very significant pipeline for taking the recycled water or treated water and injecting it.
Thank you, Commissioner Wertz. Yeah, so picking up on some of the cost implications of the site that is already owned by the city and the cost of pipeline.
Commissioner Lockett?
Thank you. I don't frankly feel very qualified to answer these types of questions, but when you added the word perception, my perception, that made me more comfortable answering the question. So my perception is just me. It's like totally not scientific. And I mean, obviously you're going to pick the site that's the best one. So I guess I'll make the comment that part of the benefit of site B or A, I don't know, probably B, would be back on the cost issue. Like, what is Micron expected to do or pay for if they're going to be using the water? Or is it just like, we're going to do it as a benefit because you've located your facilities here as part of like the tax break deal? I just don't know. So I think the Micron, we've just got to talk about the Micron aspect of this and how they'll use the water and what the benefits would be to the economy and who pays. So that's lots of benefits. That's lots of words, but yeah, I mean, I don't know how to pick a
If I could
site.
just add,
So potential water users?
Yeah, but I don't know if that's a benefit or not,
Right.
yeah, it's definitely a consideration. 'cause
but it's a
I'm-
consideration. I'm just
in a
uncomfortable
similar
with the,
mind. Yeah, I don't want to like overly benefit one particular sector or business, if that is something that might be on the table, and that might be part of what you're considering, if I'm hearing you correctly, Commissioner.
thank you very much. And I appreciate that, that very much. I would like not to call out a specific company, and I value that greatly. I think that goes back to your first question though, like, can we build subdivisions out here? If we can, or if there'll be benefits to having some industrial, residential, commercial. I mean, it'd be a benefit to have it on city-owned land versus county. Is the other on the county land? Whose land is Site A on? Sorry, I'm
That-
totally out of order, but I'm just getting down to business. Trying to be mindful of our time.
Yeah, the site A is on the airport site, so that would be a city site, and site B is in the process of being annexed into the city
From the county?
from the county, correct? And then something to note, site B is located within an area that is zoned industrial. And a broad portion of that going to the north is also zoned industrial, just something to be aware of.
Thank you for that. So I guess the benefit to additional industry in the future in Site B is a potential benefit.
Thank you.
Agglomeration economies. Commissioner Colette, and then we'll jump over to Commissioner Thornfeld.
Thanks, Chair Gravett. The one thing that I see about Site B is that there's possibly fewer unknowns, just because part of that, kind of those big circles, there's already development and roads and infrastructure there. I don't know that it's necessarily detrimental or a benefit to any of that infrastructure, but I think we know that something is there versus the other site where there just really isn't anything yet. So we don't know what's going to be built. We don't know what could be there. I'm not sure how where it is as far as where the airplanes land and what could potentially be built there, but it just seems like Site B perhaps has fewer unknowns.
Commissioner Thornfeld?
Thank you, Chair. So a lot has already been said, but I was kind of wondering like whether, obviously Site A is more remote. It's not as close to Micron. It's not as close to ID4, all of that. So I was wondering, like, do we want our site to be more remote so that, we can expand out there, or that, less contamination, or, I don't even know. That's more sciencey. Or do we want it closer to the city and closer to Micron and closer to these things that have already been developed, because, obviously moving it around, it's going to take longer to move stuff from Site A to these industries than Site B. So
Chair.
I don't know if it's a benefit or not, but
May I just jump in for a minute? I think it's okay for these to be possible benefits at this point, because we'll ask you all to, check mark vote, sticky note. I know we're close on time, but it would be nice to have that piece. So it's even as a potential benefit. And then as you are reflecting on that, and if you're like, nope, you won't spend your money there and you'll spend it somewhere else. So I think it's better to have it up there as a possibility, and then see how you all feel about that once you have them all up there. Yes, thank you.
Commissioner Wirtz?
Thank you, Chair. I just have a clarification. It seems like we're saying one or the other. Is that the right framing here? Or is it which is better because we might do both? It's not clear to me.
Which is first?
I think that,
Yeah.
thank you, Chair, Commissioner Wentz, I think that is the question. It's probably more the latter, if there is a potential that we could do either site, which is first, or maybe alternatively, no, I'm not going to make an alternative statement, which is first. The alternative statement was going to be too leading.
Commissioner Morgan?
Chair, off of Commissioner Thornfeld's comments, and I'm reflecting earlier in this conversation, we talked about this space could be something that's of use to the community and very similar to the watershed. People going out there and interacting and being able to experience public art and learn more about how Public Works is doing amazing things for our community. I feel like Site B does offer that potential a little bit more than a site that's just hecking out there. So that's another benefit that I see is just being able to have easier access and have be less in a rural area for a site that could be community oriented.
Any other questions, comments, concerns, benefits?
I think one of the benefits could be drinking water. And I don't want to necessarily say site A because it seemed to me that buying the site, building the pipeline would be a lot more expensive than having Veolia drill a well somewhere out in that area, another well out there. But I do think that a benefit of having a drinking water well somewhere out there would be a benefit. Does that make sense? I mean, we see it in site A, but yeah, but I think I don't want to choose site A because like I said, I think the cost of what it would take to do site A, it would be a reduced cost if we were to put a drinking well or have Veolia do that somewhere closer to where the injection site is.
Excellent. Okay.
So I think, can I point out a difference that I noticed between A and B on that note? So if you look at site A, you'll see that we first hit a drinking water well between 25 and 40 years. But if we jump to site B, the first time we hit a drinking water well is out at 70 and 150 years. And I'm curious if that feels significant to the commission, and if it does feel significant, why?
Yes.
I'll jump in to start. I think that a lot's going to change within 40 years anyway. So this may be just one way that we could, through site selection, sort of incentivize something like a compact design of uses of wells of industry, especially in site B. Commissioner Thornfeld?
Thank you, Chair. That is kind of something that I was wondering, and mostly like with the whole idea, what the end goal is. Like if we want to prioritize industry or drinking water, because it seems like from the packet, it seems like we're prioritizing more industry. And in that case, there's a whole bunch of industry wells by site B. But if we're prioritizing drinking wells, then obviously site A. So like, which is going to be more important for us, you know? That's kind of my question with that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Moritz?
Thank you, Chair. I guess I'm finding this a little bit interesting, but also uncomfortable because I don't really feel like I have enough data. Like these wells that are owned, these drinking water wells, I don't think they're their only wells. And I don't know that, I don't even know if what we're prioritizing for here, frankly. So I see the data showing that the water that will be added will reach drinking water wells under site A faster than under site B. But I don't know that is, I just don't see that as necessarily being a priority. I don't know. I mean, maybe it is, but does the company want that siting? And why? That needs to be part of the conversation with the public. And I was looking at it, I think my lens when I first put up something was cost effectiveness. Just about, well, you own the site, you got the facility there, but I guess we're kind of missing why are we prioritizing, what are our values for prioritizing, I guess. So I'm finding it interesting, but also awkward.
Chair, appreciate that feedback. And we want to hear the dialogue and hear, like, those are like, that may not seem like a helpful comment. That's actually a helpful comment because it's starting to frame for us, watching you think through like, okay, I'm not sure I have enough information, or this is interesting, but it'd really help me to understand what the priorities are going back to our highest and best use policy. So these are really helpful comments, and I'm trying not to nod or smile or anything. It's really helpful for us to hear the comments.
And Chair, if I could, I think in so many ways we want to hear what your values are. So we aren't going to bring a option like this if we're not founding it in some of the, technical certainty and the other pieces, but where there are these differences, it's really important that we hear from you. I guess to Steve's point, the dialogue, but hearing your values as a representation of the community, that's really important.
Commissioner Moritz?
I wanted to follow up. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. So that's great. And I appreciate that. And it still feels awkward. And in part, I think it feels awkward to me because I'm not sure the community is going to view this as beneficial water. I feel like there's still a safety. How safe is this that won't be answered? So if that's lingering for some in the community, you have to nail that piece. And then I'm not saying it's my concern, but I think that the risk of putting water in the ground that had been industrial water and having groundwater flow to drinking water wells, if it's not explained well, that could be a showstopper, I guess. So I guess that's why it's really important to make sure that people know that it's super high quality treated water and that the regulatory system says this is safe to put in the ground. And I think that's one of the big challenges of this whole program. So.
Yeah, and then sort of building on that, just from the perception side, that trying to explain it and ask questions, where I constantly was getting the hiccup was conflating the whole entire water program as the recycled water program. And to me, Site B sort of flows pretty well with that initial story of industrial reuse, just by proximity of current industrial uses and this projected proximity over the years to existing and potentially future expanded industrial wells. So it seems like it's all part of a similar narrative.
Chair.
Commissioner Morgan.
I don't know if you might be able to answer this, but how solid is our water, like our aquifer currently? And so 25 to 40 years might not be a time scale that we're concerned about our water, but at a longer scale we are. And so we want to make sure we are hitting certain wells. So I don't think it's concerning at this point because I haven't heard anything through these conversations, but is that something that we should be mindful and considerate of in terms of like, is our aquifer dropping drastically with the growth in our Treasure Valley?
Chair, there are areas, this is the groundwater management area that is dropping. There are shallower wells in the valley that are showing signs of dropping, and we see that in Southwest Boise, where you may have heard about wells going dry. Those are typically pretty shallow wells, and that's related back to the irrigation practices changing and not recharging that shallow aquifer. And I think one of the things that we talk about the city, and I don't want to overly influence the conversation, but you're right in that we don't have a crisis today. or a looming crisis. And sometimes we'll hear from the community, it's like, well, we don't have a crisis. Why are you doing this? It's like, well, we don't want to wait for the crisis. So we're trying to be proactive and get ahead of it so we aren't in a similar situation to, say, the Eastern Snake River Plain. So can we point to, like, there is a groundwater management area. It is an emerging issue. Is there a crisis that's driving this today? Not necessarily, if that helps.
Okay. It just makes me think of like 25 to 40 years out, if we're projecting and we're looking at site A, and there could be potential for a drastic drop, and we need more drinking water, then it clearly just makes sense to do site A. But if that in 25 to 40 years, we still feel like we will have a strong aquifer, then that feels less of like of priority.
Commissioner Colette?
Thanks, Chair Gravatt. I was thinking about, and it's taking it sort of in a different direction, but thinking about the way the watershed has we've really taken sewage management and turned it into like an educational tourist destination, which hats off to you for that. But if we're thinking about this as something that really does become an educational and community engagement tool, then Site B is pretty cool because it's right as you enter into Boise, very good access, good proximity. If we talk about the city sustainability goals and some of the things that we're planning on doing, what a great opportunity to have a showpiece to really tell that story as people are coming into Boise from the south versus the other one, which is kind of tucked away a little bit more.
Commissioner?
Yes, council member.
Yeah, I think the important thing is that the project itself is, no matter if it's A or B, we're putting it into the ground. If we notice that we have a big concern in another area within Boise, then I feel like we could do necessary things to get that water diverted to those areas, like a pipeline or like digging a well that's a drinking well. So I think, to me, I don't have the technical expertise. I go back to what Commissioner Lockett said to really make that decision. But I think the determination for me is, I'm a little bit ambivalent between the two. So I look at it from a cost perspective. I mean, I think that for me, the importance is that we're doing it. Regardless if it's A or B, I think because we own the land and where it's at, the co-location, to me, put it at Site B.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Excuse me, Chair. I think we're a little past 6. I want to, again, be respectful of time. I'm wondering if we can, if we wrap up this conversation, think about over the next month, if there are other things that come up that we could add to the list, we're more than happy to do that. And then we start the next meeting in November with the kind of finishing up the exercise we want to go through with you all on prioritization. Does that sound fair?
That sounds good to me. Then
Yeah.
we can get the whole band together and all be in person to check the boxes.
Okay, great.
Gives us a little time to follow up with some homework and other feedback from folks we know. Commissioner Pagan?
Chair, I will be virtual for November 6th. I have a work trip that runs right over top of that. So
We'll
if I
fit-
could try and vote virtually.
Yeah, we'll figure something out. Maybe we can do, you don't want me to talk technology.
A drone.
We'll
We can
figure something out.
facilitate that. Excellent. So just so you're prepared for the next meeting, what we'll do here in this exercise is, once we've identified those benefits, and again, if you think of more before the next meeting, please make note of those. What we're going to do is give you a hypothetical budget to spend and prioritize each of these benefits. So you're going to help us understand, prioritize the benefits to you that we've identified. So that'll be an exercise that we'll do in the next meeting in November. So thank you for this extended conversation about benefits and for your thoughtful engagement. And I believe I'll go
Right.
back to you.
Yeah, and thank you. Thank you for sticking with us through. Commissioner Lockett, if you have a final
One more
thought.
question, pretty please.
Sure, one more quick one.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So I'm dreaming up how I'm going to spend my budget with my sticky notes. I think it would be helpful for me to understand if our vision as a city is to, like, let's do this, let's get her done, let's do it right. And then if it's successful, we would do another one in the future, right? I mean, this isn't the end all be all. So though it's absolutely important that you all select the right site, I mean, we'll have other chances and maybe there'll be multiple sites across the city, right? Is that generally the idea?
Chair, Commissioner, yes, any future capacity that we build, we would envision would have similar attributes to this and would be not in the river and would be recycled water in some way. I think that's a really helpful perspective. I think, I don't think anyone on the commission right now is part of our utility planning process and coloring in pies and helping us determine the outcome of that. Were you at yeah, okay, so it's a different approach, but it's very similar, and just the dialogue and listening to you all is tremendously valuable. And I think getting the data from the budget you get to spend will help a ton. But so anyway, that I'm just really excited about it. To answer the question, yes, I think this would be the first of potentially more than one.
All right. Thank you all. That was very thought-provoking. All right. Is there any other business to come before the commission today? Going once, going twice? All right. If not, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Commissioner Pagan?
Chair, I move to adjourn.
Motion. Do we have a second? A second from Commissioner Lockett. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries and we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.